70% of high-performing individual contributors fail in their first executive role. Not because they lack intelligence or work ethic. They fail because they're still operating from the wrong playbook. The skills that made you irreplaceable as an expert are precisely the skills holding you back as a leader. You've spent 15 years building expertise. You're the person everyone comes to. Your technical knowledge is unquestionable. Your track record speaks for itself. You earned the promotion. You deserve it. And now you're drowning. The meeting agendas are longer. The decisions are slower. You're not building anything tangible anymore. You're managing people who seem less committed than you are. You're working longer hours than when you were an individual contributor. And somehow you're still falling behind. Your boss seems frustrated. Your team seems confused about priorities. And deep down, you're wondering if you made a mistake. You didn't. But you are making one now. You're applying expert logic to an executive problem. Those are two different games entirely. In Singapore and across Southeast Asia, we're seeing this pattern accelerate. According to recent research from Heidrick & Struggles on executive transitions in the Asia-Pacific region, 64% of newly promoted leaders experience a credibility dip in their first 12 months. Not because they're suddenly less capable. Because they're still behaving like the expert everyone hired them to stop being. In the next 9 minutes, we're going to walk through 3 concrete frameworks that distinguish expert thinking from executive thinking. More importantly, we're going to show you exactly how to rewire your default responses so the transition doesn't feel like grief. It feels like upgrade. This isn't about soft skills training. This isn't about learning to delegate. Though you will. This is about understanding the fundamental shift in how decisions get made, how value gets created, and how you measure your own worth once you're in the role. By the end of this, you'll know precisely where you're still operating as an expert and how to shift that posture without losing the credibility that got you here. You'll have a 60-day framework to rebuild trust with your team. And you'll understand why some executives thrive in transition while others get stuck trying to be the smartest person in every room. Let's start. First framework. From problem solving to problem setting. As an expert, your value came from solving problems that others couldn't solve. You were fast, you were thorough, you were the answer. Your brain was wired to see a broken system and fix it. That's not wrong. That skill got you here. But an executive doesn't primarily solve problems. An executive defines which problems matter. The distinction is brutal. McKinsey research from 2025 on executive effectiveness across multinational firms found that executives who continued to spend more than 40% of their time on hands-on problem solving saw a 32% higher risk of team disengagement. Why? Because their teams interpreted that hands-on intervention as a lack of confidence in them. The expert's best habit became the executive's liability. Let's look at a real example. A VP of engineering at a mid-cap software firm in Bangalore promoted internally was spending 12 hours a week reviewing code before merging. Technically sound. Caught bugs early. But his team of 12 engineers gradually stopped taking risks in their pull requests. They waited for his feedback to iterate. Rather than pushing forward, his presence, which once meant safety, now meant control. His problem solving actually slowed the team down. Here's the application. For the next 30 days, identify one recurring problem you're currently solving. Document it. Then ask yourself 3 questions. First, can someone on my team solve this, even if they'd solve it slightly differently? Second, what would happen if I stopped solving it and instead coached someone else through solving it? Third, What am I not thinking about because I'm absorbed in this problem? Then step back. That's the shift. The second framework is about shifting from mastery to multiplicity. Your expertise made you powerful because you knew more than most. That was your identity. And identities are hard to release, especially when they've worked. But executive impact doesn't scale through your knowledge. It scales through your ability to hold multiple conflicting perspectives simultaneously and make decisions despite uncertainty. You can't be the expert in product strategy, operational efficiency, talent development, financial modeling, and stakeholder management all at once. Yet as an executive, you're expected to make informed decisions across all those domains. Let's take a real case. A chief product officer at a fintech company in Singapore came from a data science background, brilliant at predictive modeling. When her team proposed a new product feature, she approached it with data rigor. What was the evidence? What was the baseline? What was the model prediction? Those questions were smart. But what she didn't ask was about sales channel readiness, regulatory pathway clarity, or customer support scalability. The product launched. It was technically sound. Customer adoption stalled. She'd optimized for the wrong variables because she'd defaulted to her expertise. Here's how you shift this. In your next 3 major decisions, explicitly solicit perspective from 2 people who have zero expertise in that domain. Not to be polite, to genuinely understand what you're missing. Then document the gap between your initial framework and what emerged. That gap is where executive thinking lives. The third framework. From outcomes to systems. As an expert, you owned an outcome, a project, a campaign, a fix. You could draw a line from your effort to a result. That line was short and clear. You could see the impact. You could feel it. Executives rarely get that clarity. Your work doesn't result in an outcome. It results in a system that other people use to create outcomes. The feedback loop is longer. The attribution is messier. And for most experts coming into executive roles, this is profoundly disorienting. According to recent data from the World Economic Forum's Future of Work report from 2026, executives who continued to measure their personal effectiveness based on direct project delivery experienced 41% higher burnout rates and saw their team development metrics decline by 18% on average. They were exhausted because they were still trying to be both the system and the output. Here's a real example from a manufacturing firm in India. A newly promoted operations director came from the shop floor. He understood production. He understood quality. For 20 years, he'd owned the physical output. In his first 6 months as director, he was still on the floor during critical production runs. Not because his team needed him there. Because his brain didn't yet recognize that his actual job was designing the production system, mentoring floor supervisors, and optimizing across the entire supply chain. He was running himself ragged trying to maintain the output identity he'd always had. The shift required him to step back for 6 weeks, to document the existing production system, to identify where it was fragile, to invest in training 2 floor supervisors who could own what he used to own. It felt like stepping back. It was actually stepping forward. Here's the application. Map your last 4 weeks. Every hour spent. Now categorize each hour as either building the system or running the output. The hours you're spending running the output are hours you should be coaching someone else to run. For every 15 hours you spend on output, you should be spending 5 on system building. If your ratio is inverted, your transition hasn't happened yet. That's where the rewriting needs to happen. Imagine 18 months from now. You're sitting in a quarterly business review. Your team presents a major initiative. 3 months ago, you would have been leading this presentation. Today, you're listening, and something happens that wouldn't have happened when you were the expert. Your team members disagree about approach, about timeline, about resource allocation. And instead of feeling threatened by that disagreement, you recognize it as a sign of health. They're thinking. They're owning the problem, not waiting for you to solve it. One of your engineers proposes a solution that's different from what you would have chosen. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just different. And you ask about the reasoning. You push on the thinking, but you don't overrule it. You let them build it and learn from it. The presentation finishes. Your skip-level manager pulls you aside and says something that would have felt impossible a year ago. I can see your fingerprints on this team's capability. Not on. Thanks for listening. If you found this valuable, please subscribe to Apex Minds D4J for more powerful insights. See you in the next one.